Okay, it's time. The results of the State of the Laravel Survey are here for the State of Laravel Survey 2024. So it's time to dive into what makes Laravel, specifically the community, the frameworks, the pieces tick behind Laravel. I think some odd 4,500 plus respondents responded to the survey. So what can we learn? Let's dive in. So if you don't know, I talked about the State of Laravel survey when I was doing the Stack Overflow survey and giving my thoughts on the results of that. But the State of Laravel survey is conducted by a third party, so this is an unofficial one, but I still hope that there's a lot of developers that this kind of represents, and hopefully next year even more. But Tobias Petri, excuse me if I pronounce your name wrong, you can find Tobias here, created this survey to be able to give a voice to people who just have used Laravel, thinking about using Laravel, or maybe use it professionally, non-professionally, and all of that. So Laravel's been created more than 10 years ago. Today it is the most popular PHP framework used by thousands of developers every day. That always blows my mind. I think Taylor shared some of these stats at the official Laracon keynote about the daily downloads that and daily composer installs that Laravel has, which is mind-boggling. And the results obtained from 2021 to 2023 can be viewed directly in this report. And so it looks like 2021 was when Tobias put this out. So 4,500 responses in 2021, and then 2024, 4,090. So hopefully this continues to improve. And I want to just dive into some of the results that we can see and see what we can learn from it. What are the things that we can gain from understanding how people think about Laravel or what the community actually feels? It's not just the people who are sharing their own thoughts on Twitter, for example, or even in the YouTube comments. But if you're here, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this video. Tell me what's your favorite part about Laravel and subscribe. I like making these videos. So if you're a web artisan like me, do that. Okay, so let's dive in. So the meta, participants, we got that. Developer profile, gender identity, 95% male, 2.13% female. I was really impressed and just excited for the amount of Larabels who were at Laracon. There was a good number of them who got on the stage and took a picture. You can find a kind of floating around in Twitter as well. But it'd be awesome to see this increase, especially because I think as more people want to start learning web development, I think Laravel's a great opportunity to do that. And I think one of my personal goals is to make sure it's easier for people who are just learning to start learning Laravel. Okay, location. So mostly Europe for this survey. I think the majority of my audience, so the majority of those watching, are in Europe, India, and by Europe, I mean in India, Germany, and the UK. And then North America is tied with all of those, at least for my audience. So it'd be interesting to see how that kind of reflects here versus the people who are watching this video, possibly. Europe with 49%. And so we can see all of the past years in these lists. So Europe, 49%, Asia, 20%, North America, 16%, Africa, South America, Oceania looks like it's ordered by this year specifically and not necessarily by all the other years. Okay. Years of programming experience. Okay. Less than 1 year. So there's still some people. It's not like there's no one who took this who is just starting programming. So it's awesome to see there are still people who just started programming that are using Laravel. I like that. But the majority 10 to 20 years. Which doesn't surprise me. I think a lot of people who have started learning web development 10, 20 years ago started learning PHP. For me, it would be probably in the 5 to 10 years now, which is crazy. I just felt like I was almost in the 2 to 5 years. But now I guess I've only creeped into the 5 to 10 years. But yeah, 20 plus years. Okay, 14%. Okay, years of Laravel experience. So I'm interested in 10, 20 years. How many years of Laravel? 10 plus years. Okay, so that is good to see, I think. The people taking this survey, they've been programming for 10 to 20 years, but they have only been using Laravel for maybe 2 to 5 years or 5 to 10 years, which is really cool to see. Like Laravel has only been around for 11 years, maybe. I forget the specific year that's been around, but So it's crazy that there's still 7.53% of people who have been around probably since the inception of Laravel, but the majority 5 to 10 years. So that would mean this would be probably Laravel 4 to Laravel 2, 3 to Laravel 7, probably 5 years ago. I would probably be in the probably not even. So 1 to 2 years. I would still be in the 1 to 2 years category. So I first wrote my first line of Laravel, at least the one that I pushed to GitHub. And so I would say my first application in Laravel, I had probably messed around with scaffolding out a Laravel application. But the first line that I actually pushed to GitHub that was part of a project that I was building was in October of 2022. And so that's coming up on 2 years now, which is pretty crazy to think. It's definitely wild for me. I built my first SaaS application in Laravel. That was like my first SaaS that I built, and then first full SaaS application I started selling in February of 2023. Okay, open source contributions. Are you publishing or contributing to open source projects? No, and yes. So it's good to see that this is not as big of a gap as I would have expected, especially if you are like the majority of people have been using Laravel 2 to 5 years and 5 to 10 years, and who have only been programming for 5 to 10 years. It's good to see that this gap is not as widespread. Maybe in other communities, it's probably a little closer in the sense that there might be a majority of people who don't contribute. But I think that's what makes the Laravel community pretty special, is there is that sense of ownership, that sense of, here's what I love about Laravel, let me try to make it better. And that's why it's open source. Like I had my first, I had done like some open source contribution to some third-party packages within the Laravel community for in the last year. But just maybe 4 months ago or so, I had my first PR merged into a first-party Laravel package, Livewire Volt. And so it was really fun. It was a really good experience. And so I think the reason why this yes is so high is because it's an integral part of the community, in my experience, in my opinion. So yeah, I love that this is not that wide of a gap. If this was like 80% no and 20% yes, that'd kind of be sad, but it wouldn't also be surprising either, if that makes sense. Primary operating, this surprises me because I think in the Stack Overflow survey, again, completely different audience, completely different group of people that you're targeting as developers, but Mac OS being primary operating system for this survey is surprising, especially that has trended very high up in the past couple of years, and Windows trended down in the past couple of years, and Linux stayed the same. I wonder what other is that like. What is other? I actually don't know. Maybe it's like the iPad OS or like Palm Pilot. I don't know, but still, a couple people say other. But yeah, trend up in Mac OS, trend down in Windows, about the same in Linux, give or take. But that's a little surprising to me, especially when, yeah, maybe it's just because it's a little bit like any companies are veering more towards it's okay if you use Mac OS, like as a company, we'll give you a Mac OS or whatever, we'll give you your own Mac. I think for the most time, you probably, especially like in 2021, it was just everyone got a Windows machine. I don't know the answer to that one, but it's very interesting. Primary code editor, very interesting. This is also surprising to me. Again, I know that this is a rather small subset of the Laravel community, especially in regards to how big and widespread Laravel is. And it's a specific niche of subsets. So probably people who maybe hang out on Twitter or are coding, have been coding for 5 to 10 years, and Laravel for 3 to 5 years or whatever that was. But the difference between PHP, Storm, and VS Code is a lot smaller than I would have expected, at least just from what I hear on Twitter and what I have experienced with people in the Laravel world. Has been majority PHP Storm. I would expect that maybe the 65% or whatever, but 54% and 40% is a big shift, and it's not necessarily trending down or up in either direction, but very interesting to me. I'd be curious to know, especially as newer developers come to Laravel, both from the JavaScript side as well as, or Rails side, whatever side, people who are developers who are moving into the Laravel world, as well as new developers going into the Laravel space. I'd be curious if VS Code continues to trend up, especially with things like the Laravel official VS Code extension. Sublime Text trending down. Taylor still uses Sublime Text. He used it on the stage at Laracon. I used to use Sublime Text. Before I would call myself a developer, I just used it to edit HTML files. And then Vim, it's trending up. There you go. Notepad++, Atom, Other. I'd be curious how much of this other is things like Cursor or like Z. Cursor would probably, I would think that would still be like a VS Code. Z would probably be the only one I can think of that's like an other. Unless you're using something like, I don't even know. Other, I don't know, like IntelliJ. You're using some very specific niche tool. But yeah, plus 1.25%. What other programming languages? JavaScript. Okay. You have to use it. It seems like it's almost unanimous. TypeScript, Python, Go, Java, C#, C and C++, Dart, Rust, Swift, Kotlin, Ruby, Objective-C, Perl, Other, and none. Okay, it's interesting that the none is higher than things like Objective-C, Perl, and even Ruby. I think I said that I have used just JavaScript and TypeScript. I would have expected Rust to be higher than Go. And maybe that could be wrong. I have experimented with Go. I actually want to do a couple of videos, maybe like a mini series of me doing a first dive, first look, first like experiment with different languages and different frameworks. Elixir is what I want to do. Go is what I want to do, and Rust is what I want to do. I have never, other than just very basic syntax stuff, I've never done anything too crazy within each of those. Speaking of that, it is also interesting that there's no Elixir. Maybe that's just another. I would think, and that's probably because if you're using Elixir, it's similar kind of language that you would use PHP for, but this is also for people who maybe are working with Laravel in some project at work, or maybe client work, and then you're using something else on the side. So these don't surprise me, but the high of Python and Go over Rust is a little bit interesting. Application context, so mostly business, and then hobby, middle of the road there. It's interesting to see this trend up. I like to see that, especially just from the amount of people taking this. So it's, hey, the people who are taking this, even if it's a small subset, 4,000 people, are employed, or at least self-employed or freelance, to use Laravel. And then they also, I would assume, since this does not equal 100%, I would assume hobby means you also use Laravel on the side. Team size, 1 to 5. I believe Caleb Porzio on his Notes on Work podcast today just said that this was what he was looking at, is people who are looking to use something like Livewire Flux. How big is your team? Surprisingly, 1 to 5 and 5 to 10 are even higher than 1. And not many big teams in Laravel. That doesn't surprise me, but it's just interesting to note. It does surprise me that there are still teams of this, and maybe not all of them are using Laravel. Maybe that's like a hard question to answer, because you have, okay, maybe you have a team of 70, but you only have 3 people specific to Laravel tasks. But I know that like the Zillow folks, for example, have large teams, and they're all using, at least the Aereo teams, or Aereo, are using Laravel. Tech stack, 8.3. It's surprising that people have jumped up in that. It's not that is the highest. So yeah, it's cool to see, because if you're looking at a different tech stack or a different ecosystem, it takes a little bit for people to adopt new things. Again, very small subset of a response, but knowing that people have upgraded to 8.3 already, at least 76.1% of people, it's encouraging, I think. 8.2, 68. People are trending down, which it should be. And there's still some on 5.x. This is almost really hard to upgrade from, I should say. So that doesn't surprise me. But like the trend down is, I think that's indicative of just PHP developers in general. I think because it takes so long for specific PHP versions to come out, it's not like you have a minor version of Node every other week. There is a little bit easier of an upgrade path. So that's good to know. This is also interesting too. Laravel 11. And so maybe that's another like bonus of the Laravel ecosystem is I think especially with tools like Laravel Shift, for example, there are things that make upgrade paths easier. And so this is what's encouraging to see, because if you were to guess that LTS version or whatever, you would expect this to be more even. Even Laravel 11 was just March of this year. So the numbers within 5 months is rather large. That's crazy. I like that. Databases, MySQL, MariaDB, SQLite. Postgres being low is interesting. And that might be just the difference between, PHP and MySQL seems to be more of a tight-knit group in a lot of ways than PHP and Postgres, where in the JavaScript world or even like the Rails world is very Postgres focused, at least from my outsider view looking in. SQLite being higher than Postgres is very interesting to me. I personally have not really used MySQL that much, at least in production databases. It's usually either SQLite or Postgres. And Postgres is really only specific because of like vector embeddings. MongoDB, still pretty high. SQL Server, Single Store. I know Single Store is very big within Laravel developers. The Phalam Analytics team is huge on Single Store, Jack Ellis. And I've played around with it just because I got gifted a Single Store for Laravel developers course, which is amazing. I feel really smart when I watch that course. Front-end UI library, Tailwind UI. So yes, you're using some kind of front-end UI library. This is probably very telling for like Flux UI because it's saying that yes, people are using stuff. It's only 9.95% of people of all 4,000 developers who are not using some kind of front-end UI library. And this isn't just you're using Tailwind CSS. This is no means you are putting your library and your styles together yourself. Server-side rendering. Wow. And I know inertia being so low isn't surprising because that is relatively new. And this, it's hard to count like which is Blade, which is Livewire. Maybe, can I click on anything? Let's see. I can't click on anything. Okay. But the fact that just a single page application with Laravel as an API over client-side rendering with inertia is pretty interesting. I'm interested. It looks like it's already trending up. I think this will trend up even more. This will trend down, in my opinion, I think, in the next couple of years. And this will continue to trend up as more people get familiar with the project. Because most applications just need Blade. You don't even need that much Livewire if you don't need it or you don't want it either. Vue.js, Livewire. Okay, trending up. Very interesting. Alpine.js, jQuery, trending down. React. Another kind of prediction of mine is React is going to trend past jQuery, and I think Vue.js and Livewire be on a similar plane with React and Alpine kind of being on a similar plane as well. I really hope Svelte trends up. I really like Svelte, especially because I think the Svelte ecosystem, the Svelte community is very similar in like style and vibes as Laravel. Then we have Hotwire and other. CSS styling, Tailwind CSS, okay, 79%. Sass, I can't remember the last time I used Sass, but it makes sense because it's helpful. It has the modifications that you need. Vanilla CSS, I love this for Laravel developers because even in things like Rails or Elixir, Phoenix, you have to make Tailwind CSS a part of your application. It's just a given within Laravel, especially if you're using a out-of-the-box stack. So I like that this is just given within Laravel, especially because Adam Wathan came up from the Laravel world. Filament, there you go, 39.73%. Nova, so this is just specifically for administration panels. I'm curious how many people who selected Filament also use it for something else, or maybe don't use it for administration panels. I have not messed around with Backpack. It'd be interesting to see. And then none. Okay, so none. Most people don't use any kind of admin panels. So local, it's not really trending up. I would have expected that to trend up, but a lot of people still need to use Docker and Sail for certain things. I use OrbStack if I have to use any kind of Docker thing. PHP Artisan Serve. This is also just a solid option when you just need to get something up up and running, remote, and virtualized. I've never used Laravel Homestead. I don't know the benefits, but I know that there's a reason why it's trending down, because it was really popular, especially around this time, especially when Laravel Forge was released. It was Laravel Forge with Laravel Homestead, and that was, hey, you can have your local development up and running, and then you deploy it. And I think that's what we're seeing now with Laravel Cloud too. You can have Herd, download VS Code with the VS Code extension, and deploy to cloud. That story is still incredibly popular, and the story doesn't change. The methods do change. Variable dumping, DD, Ray. Okay, so what I selected. I usually use this for my debugging. But debug bar and telescope and clockwork, those are huge too. I have never used Xdebug. I know that it's popular, and an interview I was a part of recommended me to start using Xdebug, but I never started doing it. I don't have really a need to. Unit tests. I have a video on the Laravel official channel of me writing my first test. I wrote it in Pest, and Pest made me start using the functional Livewire Volt API a little bit more. But that was my first unit test. So trending up is always a good sign. Trending up for coding standards. I use Pint myself. I've never used static analysis. I guess you could, I don't even know if that's the same thing. Like I use PHP IntelliFence, but that's a LSP and not static analysis. But I think it's got static analysis built in. Code quality analysis, I've never used any of this. Source code hosting, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. Okay. Production, almost daily. Interesting. A few times a week. I would probably be like a few times a week, few times a month. I think I range around here. Almost daily is pretty awesome. I think it's cool to see. Okay, so mostly server. Shared hosting. Wow, that's crazy. It is so prevalent, especially in this space where it seems like the most of everything is pretty modern, but so shared hosting is still prevalent. And then platform as a service, and then serverless. Wow. I would have expected this to be more along these lines. I'm curious what other, maybe that's like an in-house hosting. Error monitor, so email, Flare, Sentry, okay. Uptime monitor, server metric monitor, PHP performance profiler. Again, I've never used some of this stuff. Sentry. Okay, so I'm curious of how much this goes up and to the right. Server metric monitor, because obviously it's needed. So I'm curious of how much it goes up to the right, and if this starts to trend down, or is this still, do you do both? Do you monitor errors as well as like your application, or is it rolled all into one? And obviously Sentry is in both of these. Direction of Laravel, here we go. Here's the opinions. Agree strongly that it's moving in the right direction, so 40% agree. Agree, 44.4%. Neutral, disagree. So very few disagree, but not really strongly agree that it's moving in the right direction. It's helpful to know. Simplifies development, agree strongly. So that's a big push that Laravel simplifies building web applications. Agree strongly. I love seeing that this is so big of a shift. One, that it agrees that we can agree that Laravel simplifies building web applications. We might not all agree or strongly agree that it's moving in the right direction. Maybe you can just agree on that. But that it simplifies building web applications brings me a lot of hope. I love that. Enjoy. There we go. This is a huge number too, because you don't see many disagree and disagree strongly, even in a small subset group, which is awesome to see. I love it. Changing, innovating too fast. And this doesn't surprise me. I think one of the things that I appreciate about Laravel and why I joined the Laravel team was that I think that there's so much that Laravel can do, just with how the community is run, how Taylor runs the community, how that top down is presented and pushed out the community. There's new developers and existing developers who want what we have in Laravel. And sometimes you have to change. Sometimes you have to innovate. And it might seem too fast, but there's a reason why we enjoy working with the framework, and we know that it simplifies building web applications. So I think if this is you, I guess there's people who disagree with this too, but mostly in the neutral, agree strongly camp. If this is you, I would say just keep holding on. There's a reason why we build with the framework. There's a reason why I enjoy working with it. And I think us as a community, I feel like I'm a part of that community. It's not just me kind of looking at this from the outside in, but when I was looking at it from the outside in, I loved seeing that things were always changing, but there was still clear direction for everyone. It was like, hey, we've already decided we can use Tailwind and SQLite and whatever have you, and we just have this starter out of the box. But you also still have to have innovation through that. And that's what building with Laravel gives you. So as a web artisan myself, keep building, keep creating.